This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. We will sit down with Senator Bryan King today, Republican of Green Forrest. He's been one of the vocal opponents of Governor Sarah Sanders' 3,000-bed, $750 million state prison in Franklin County. We'll hear his arguments against building that prison and what his alternatives are. We'll also take a look at what the House and Senate state agencies committees did today as it relates to constitutional amendments. All of this on today's Talk Business and Politics Daily.
Talk Business and Politics Daily is sponsored in part by Impact Management Group and
Power. It's right there, waiting, ready to go when you are. Connect this, click that, unconnect and go every day. Delivered by your electric cooperative. Each unique, always united, and completely local. Born from a mission to provide dependable, sustainable, and affordable power to every corner of Arkansas. And delivering on that promise for a brighter Arkansas every day. It's the local hometown cooperative way. Better connected. Together. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas.
Well, on Wednesday afternoon, the state agencies committees of both the House and the Senate convened to talk about constitutional amendments. Here's what went down. First of all, the Senate State Agencies Committee postponed its scheduled Wednesday afternoon meeting until tomorrow, so no action on Senate constitutional amendment referrals. In the House, which had already whittled down its choices to a top 5, the House State Agencies Committee selected its top pick, H.J.R. 1018 by Representative David Ray, Republican of Maumelle. That measure, the Citizens-Only Voting Amendment, states that only a citizen of the U.S. meeting the qualifications of an elector under this section may vote in an election in this state. Supporters argue that there are not enough protections in the Arkansas Constitution or state law to prevent non-citizens from voting. H.J.R. 1018 must now be approved by the full House of Representatives and the Senate before it will be considered as a referral to voters in the next general election in November of 2026. Of course, you can keep up with all of this on our website at talkbusiness.net. When we come back, State Senator Bryan King joins us. He'll talk about his opposition to the state prison plan that Governor Sarah Sanders and some of the Senate leadership is supporting. We'll find out what his objections are and what his alternatives may be right after this.
Talk Business and Politics Daily is sponsored in part by Capital Advisors Group and
in the Navy, I train recruits. At Walmart, I recruit veterans. So many veterans have built their careers here.
I served in the Army for 11 years. I was promoted 4 times. Been with Walmart 9 years. I've been promoted 5 times.
I started as an hourly associate, and now I run the store.
430,000 veterans hired in the last decade. That's more than serving in the U.S. Navy today. There's no better place for veterans to work.
Connection. It's the heart of what we do. It's why we work to better the communities where we live and work. It's why we're expanding to get people connected and create digital equity programs that support affordable internet and digital literacy. We're leaders for positive change. From the way we empower our people, clients, and communities to the way we care for our planet. We live our values every day. We're Cox Communications, and we're pleased to connect with you.
Joining me now is State Senator Bryan King, Republican of Green Forest. Always good to catch up with him. Senator, you've had a busy week, and it's been a busy session. Thanks for making time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Roby.
You have been in opposition to this prison, this new state prison being built in Franklin County. In 2 minutes or less, tell me why you think this prison is the wrong plan for the state of Arkansas.
Number one, we need a holistic plan, one that addresses lowering crime in the first rate. If we lower crime, we lower people going in our court system, overburdening probation, parole. I mean, the best way for the citizens of Arkansas to address this issue is to hire 400 to 600 public safety officers. Many studies have been already done that actually helps reduce crime. The best way to make Arkansas safer is to make sure the crime doesn't happen on the front end, because once you go through the incarceration process, a lot more money. The second part is 2 out of 3 inmates in incarceration and county backlog originate from just 8 counties: Jefferson, Pulaski, Faulkner, Saline, Sebastian Crawford, Washington, Benton County. The facilities need to be built in those counties where the most crime is being originated from. And so my plan would do that. It would also have another 225 million that would address mental health facilities, which is not being addressed. Basically, this mega prison, mega financial disaster is going to lead us on a financial death spiral. These mega prisons are in Alabama, Utah, are horrible situations.
Let's talk a little bit. I want to walk through several steps of what you just outlined right there. Let's start first with putting more law enforcement officers on the streets. Will that reduce crime or will that increase arrests? Because if you increase arrests, you're going to be putting these people in prison and need more prison beds. But do you think they can stop some crimes before they happen?
Yeah, we know, from other studies that when you do policing the positive way, you're right. Once you have arrest, as I mentioned before, stop and frisk, those things I've written into bills where stop and frisk is not allowed. You can look at no knock warrants, some of those things. This is about a positive police, presence out there that, Park Plaza Mall is having murders. Unfortunately, we're just right down that. It would also assist probation parole, which is underfunded, overburdened, overworked, and they would be helping making visits to repeat offenders to reduce recidivism. They would be patrolling in those areas that would have an extra policeman. Little Rock is short 75 to 100 officers. Growing Benton, Washington County crime problem. Like I said, Benton, Washington, Sebastian County contribute 1 out of every 4 inmates. And if we don't do something to make them responsible holding the crime down there and the amount of inmates that they're putting in the system, the rest of us are just going to bear the burden of it, and they're just going to keep dumping more on the problem. I mean, this Benton County bailout, and, I go back to the same thing. Senator Esther gets up there and talks big, but he has been underfunding corrections. Corrections has stayed 8% of the budget. If you want to talk about not doing anything, corrections should have been 12% of the budget. He also voted for the Jeremy Hutchison soft on crime bills. I mean, his crime fighter now is in federal prison. And that's what's got us in this crisis is future past votes in the legislature. And we've got to look forward and look 5 years down the road of a holistic plan, not just building more prisons.
I do want to come back to prison beds and this debate here, but you've said something that triggers another thought with me. So you talked about the shortage of police officers, particularly in, say, Little Rock and some of the more populated areas of the state. Do you think that's a funding issue? Or do you think that is we just don't have enough in the potential pipeline? How do you recruit a police force? It might not matter how much money you offer. There still might not be enough candidates for those positions.
Well, you're going to have the money. There is no solution out there. We know if we continue the status plan of what they're doing and putting all this in this mega prison, mega financial disaster, we sure enough, but we're going to have money out there. It would also help equalize county deputy pay for, like, in every county, the county deputies make less money, that they would do partnerships with them, much like Drug Task Force, and actually help probation, parole, visit and repeat offenders. So it would help alleviate county pay discrepancy. We know we have to put more money out there. That's just it. And there's no other solution out there that's going to do that. And to put it all in this mega prison, mega financial disaster, that quite frankly, the only one that's going to reap the real benefits out of that are the prison building companies that are making the campaign contributions, and they're going to haul all our money out of state, and we're going to be left like Utah and Alabama in a disaster situation.
Let's talk about a bill that you have filed that I think suggests that you build some more beds onto the county prisons or in some smaller prisons around the state. Tell me a little bit about your logic on that.
Yeah, I mean, you have situations where county jail expansions, you allow an avenue, just an avenue. If the county agrees to it, state, we have a win-win partnership, much like the governor just did in Phillips County back in September, that the governor called a win-win situation. We do have situations where you could do partnerships with county jails that are a win-win for both of us, much like the governor said about Phillips County and that county partnership. So, there are a lot of avenues that we can go down. But Roby, the biggest thing that your viewers need to know is Joe Porfiry at Calico Rock, which was going to be expanded for 525 beds, shut down that to now build it at almost over double the cost to build it in this mega prison. That decision alone, that horrible decision alone, is going to cost taxpayers probably 40 to 50 million more dollars to build these 525 beds. Calico Rock was a no-brainer, and he shut it down. And there needs to be an investigation into that.
All right, let's. You and I are sitting down and having this conversation before the Senate's potentially marathon session today. I'm just predicting. Have you had any conversations since yesterday's vote where the prison funding appropriation bill was blocked? It got 19 votes, it needed 27. Have you had any conversations with Senate leadership or with the governor's office to try to persuade you or some other folks that voted against it? What's the conversation happening behind the scenes?
Unfortunately, the governor's office is not answering questions on this. Joe Porfiry won't answer questions. Behind the scenes, I'm sure they're trying to peel off, legislators with whatever they need to do. And I'm sure that process is going on. So like I said, the idea down here, what happens in the bubble, unfortunately, is not transcribes to what happens out in the real world when you can make reasonable arguments. What wins the day down here a lot of time is pressure, buying off votes, that kind of things. And unfortunately, that's when the citizens of Arkansas will suffer out of this if they allow that to happen.
Let's say that there's not enough persuasion that can get to 27 votes. What do you hope is the outcome of this discussion before you guys adjourn in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, the thing, this mega prison, mega financial Franklin County, which there's no roads, water, sewer. It was gross incompetence. There are so many things that is bad about this location. We need a holistic approach, because if we don't start reducing the crime rate, we're going to be in a financial death spiral, because Benton, Washington County, that's growing, that's not passing jail taxes, they're just going to keep putting more on the state system that the rest of us have to burden and bear and pay for. So if we don't reduce the crime rate and significantly, we're going to be in a financial death spiral and never get out of it. Embarrassingly, we already have one of the highest incarceration rates. We also need to address mental health issues. That's not being addressed. There's a lot of things can be addressed, but unfortunately, these prison building companies with donations, behind the scenes money, can get done what they need to be done. And unfortunately, in the end of this, if it goes this other route, they're going to be the only real winners in this.
Isn't it easier to build a new prison than it is to address some of the systemic problems that you're talking about? Mental health, more law enforcement officers on the street, finding ways to do preventative things to keep crime from happening in the first place?
Yeah, there's been statistics even from not pro law enforcement groups out there that have said when you do positive police presence out there, it actually reduces crime. And like I said, that is the only way we're going to get out of this, is start reducing the crime. And unfortunately, the focus is not on that. But law enforcement officers in that community do not hold big pack checks and big fundraisers like these prison building companies, these private prison companies that are emerging up now. These people are mega donors. And unfortunately, for the citizens, hopefully they don't win the day and the right thing gets done. We stop this process and have a redebate of a holistic process to look at this. Senator Hester is the reason we're in this crisis. Corrections has been 8% of the budget and is still 8% of the budget, Roby. Corrections should be 12% of the budget. So if you're not if you're underfunding corrections at a crisis time like he is doing, you have been part of creating this problem. They don't want to take responsibility for that, because it's been Republicans that have put us in this crisis.
All righty, Senator Bryan King, I wish you had some strong thoughts on this whole debate, to be
well,
so.
Yeah, well, I still want you to have me and John Brummett at the same time. Then things will be civil and we'll have a peaceful conversation.
I will guarantee that I'll make that happen. So thank you so much for being with us, Senator. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Roby.
And that is all for today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.